I got a question for you,
All
man.
right.
Can you handle the truth?
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Can you handle the truth? Here's Dave Ross.
Truth of the matter is, you can learn a lot in life from movies. And one of them that I've learned a lot from is Animal House. Now, if you go back a week ago to the last day of June, and the Mets give up 3 in the 8th in game 1 of a 3-game set against the Giants, and they blow it in the 8th, and they lose again, and they won 6 games in the month of June? They won 0 series in the entire month. And then you flip the calendar to July 1, a week ago today, on this Saturday. And it made me think of Brother Butarski. The Deltas are just sitting around. Warmers dropped a big one. It's all over. What did Brother Butarski say? What's all this lying around? Blank. Right? And they needed somebody. The Mets needed a Bluto. They needed a Brother Bluto to say, hey, what are we doing? Is this over? Nothing is over until we decide it is. You know who that was? Francisco Alvarez. And all of a sudden, the kid steps to the dish. By the way, he's 3rd right now in the Rookie of the Year voting in the National League, about 35-1. Alvarez, not the Lindors, not the Verlanders, not the Scherzers. The kid stepped up and said, let's go. Nothing's over. Runs around the house. Toga party. Let's build the Deathmobile and let's shock the world. That's what Francisco Alvarez did. Why? Because they're down to their last strike. They're down 1-0 in a game this past week in Arizona after coming back and winning 2 against the Giants to begin July. Games 1 and 2. And then all of a sudden, down to their last strike, Frankie Alvarez goes yard. Oppo. What happens next? Beatty, little base hit. Then Mark Canha, a triple. It just takes like that match. And everything can change in the blink of the eye. Why? Because the Mets have seen this happen to them over and over and over again. Oh, you need some history? Not that distant history. Last year, the Mets had a 10.5 game lead in June in the NL East. Matt Brown, there are 162 games in a baseball season. We all know that.
There are.
But what people might not know, there are more days in a baseball season than 162 games. The Mets, wait for it, last year were in first place for 175 days. Yet on game 162, they were a wild card team. It's almost impossible. But the Mets did that last year. You need more bad history for the Mets? Let's go back to 2007. Ready for this one, Matt Brown? The Mets had a 7-game lead in the NL East with 17 games to play in September. To round out the 7s, on the game 162, Tom Glavine in the Hall of Fame, he was on the bump that day. He gave up 7 runs in the first inning in a game against the Marlins that the Mets lost and somehow did not win the NL East with a 7-game lead in 17 games to go. Okay, you need more history? How about the Phillies last year? They were in stinking dead last place at the end of the first month of the season. Worse than the Nationals. So while the Braves ended up running down the Mets to win the division last year, nobody's talking about the Phillies. And they got in as a wild card team and went all the way to the World Series. So what am I telling you? This is like the Deltas. The Metropolitans have rebuilt the Deathmobile. And now it's going to be Dean Wormer that says, I hate those guys when they ruin the parade for everybody else. Because the Mets, okay, 17.5 games back. Let's not get carried away. They're not going to win the East. But a week ago this time, Matt Brown, they were 6-1 to make the postseason. You know what they are now? Plus 280. What a difference a week makes. They've already passed a couple teams on their road to the wild card. So, yeah, I played 50-1 on the Mets to win the NL pennant. Now, you say that's crazy talk. Is it? If they're plus 280 today to just make the postseason, and then they get to the wild card, and they had to play the Padres last year. We saw that ended, and the Mets were despondent, not winning the East. Then they go out in the first round, in the wild card round. Why couldn't the Mets do that this year? Why not us? Why does it have to be the Mets that are always on the wrong end of history? Why can't they turn it around like the Deltas did in Animal House? I think you're going to see this Mets team rally. And I saw it with Billy Epler, and I saw it with Steve Cohen in their State of the Union address to Met fans over a week ago before this winning streak started. What did they say? They said, we're going to take a wait-and-see approach. Yeah, if we don't turn it around, we're going to sell parts. But if we do turn it around, we'll see. Guess what? They got hope coming because you've got some arms about to come off the DL. So all of a sudden, the starting pitching is going to get better. And the bullpen still needs some help. Look, the Sugar Diaz, when Edwin Diaz went out before the season even started the World Baseball Classic, look, that's had a lasting impression on the back end of this bullpen. They were going to trade off David Robertson. They were going to trade off, Quintana's coming back, but they were going to trade off Adam Ottavino. Now those guys are going to stay, it looks like, with the same 6-game win streak. I actually think the Mets are going to add before the August 1st deadline. I'm not saying Shohei Ohtani, but he is out there. So to me, the play to make today, you could play him plus 280, but you didn't get the best of the number 6-1 a week ago. If they get in Matt Brown, kind of like what happened in reverse last year, they will be a dangerous out. And all I know is right now, this team, like the Deltas, they have rallied and they have put on those togas and they are partying because the young kids have led them. Frankie Alvarez and now the Frankie Lindors of the world are following suit. Matt Brown, the truth of the matter is, it ain't over.
Which one of the teams is going to fade? Who's fading? So let's talk about the teams that are ahead of them in the wild card race right now.
Marlins.
The Dodgers are ahead of them in the wild card race. The Marlins, the Phillies, the Brewers, the Giants are all ahead of them currently. And listen, the Cubs are only a half game back of them, so you could kind of put them right
Past
there
them this week.
neck and neck this week, right? So you take a look. Dodgers, Diamondbacks, one of the two.
Correct.
Going to be there.
Going in.
Doesn't matter. So it's not going to be one of those teams. Phillies have put together a good stretch.
Well, they've been playing great baseball.
They're 8-2 over their last 10, and you start to see all of those bats. And again, we know that there are defensive deficiencies for that team, but the bats, I think, are just going to be able to overcome that so many times. They're just so good up and down the lineup. So you see them playing some good ball. Brewers is going to be one of them or the Reds, right? And so you would have to pass one of those two, which I think is doable, right? And certainly if I think the Reds maybe could falter in the second half with all those young players trying to play 162 for the first time ever. Yeah, you know.
Sure.
Giants I haven't been impressed with anyway.
Just
over the
beat
course
them
of
two out of three.
Hadn't been impressed with them really as it is anyway. So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility for sure for this team to get in.
And I just looked at it like there were 4 guys that had to heat up for this team to get this done. And of course it is Justin Verlander and it is Max Scherzer. And then it was Francisco Lindor and Jeff McNeil. McNeil hasn't got there yet. Lindor's on fire. He's absolutely on fire right now. But again, Frankie Alvarez, and I don't know that I'm willing to play him. I've not done that in the Rookie of the Year discussion. He's really been the impetus for this turnaround for the first 6 games. And oh, by the way, I have a 150-1 ticket on the best record in July. Let's go Mets! It ain't over.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.